Welcome back, everybody. So today we're going to have the brew day for my raspberry cone ale. If you've been following me for a while, you'll know I make a raspberry ale for Jessica every year for our party, for our 4th of July party. But this year I decided, as you can see on the screen, I'm putting waffle cones in the mash. Petoskey Brewing has a beer called Cranium, which is a raspberry ale with waffle cones. Now, obviously, I don't know their recipe. I just took my standard raspberry recipe and put waffle cones in them. Again, this is home brewing, so we'll have to see how the waffle cones turn out. So for the grain bill on this, I will give you the percentages instead of the pounds. So for US 2-row, it was 80.2% of the grain bill. White wheat malt was 6.7%, and Crystal 20L was 3.3%. Now, this is for a 5-gallon batch. So if you're going to make a larger batch, you can go ahead and scale it to what you need. Or if you're going to make a smaller batch and test it, you can use those percentages to get it down to whatever size you're going to make. So for the waffle cones in this, excuse me, the box came with 12, and I gave the kids each one, so we did use 10 waffle cones in the mash. So for the water on this, Beersmith calls for 4.84 gallons of water in the mash, so I went ahead and did 5. And on this one, I was having some trouble with my pump. Looks like it's almost time to get a new pump. I did cheap out on the pump and just went with the least expensive one I could find, and I think after a year and a half it's pretty much time to go up to a Riptide or something like that. Tell me in the description below what kind of pumps you guys use, and I will check those out. So for our mash in, the temperature that we want to hit is 154. I did go over it. It was a hot day. I think I heated up my water to 170, and it was about 160 when I got it into the mash tun. But again, if you've been following me, or if you're new, one good tip is you always want to err on the side of hotter, because that way all you have to do is add some ice cubes to bring it down, instead of, if your mash temp's too low, then you're going to have to heat up more water to bring the mash temperature up, and then your water to ratio isn't going to be correct, or it's going to be way out of whack. So this was pretty much a standard brew day. Usually I do like to get the grain crushing, but for whatever reason, I guess I didn't film it. I don't know if I just didn't hit record on the camera, but I do not have that footage. So yeah, I know mashing of the grains in this one. I'm sure you guys know how to do that. But for after the hour of our mash in, we were at the, I think it was 153. So our first Vloroff did go well. Our first runnings were 21 bricks. That I wish Beersmith would calculate or give us an estimate on first running, second running, something like that. I think that would be pretty cool to find out. Now, I did go ahead and purchase Beersmith 3, so I will have some videos on that coming out soon in case you guys pick that up. So obviously, standard Vloroff, I usually do 4 pitchers, so that way that grain bed does get set and we can start running clear. Sometimes I have to do 5 or 6, but most times 3 or 4, and it's pretty good in my opinion. So for the hops on this, again, it is our standard raspberry recipe. So we are going to add half an ounce of Cascade at 60 minutes. This is a 60-minute boil. And then half an ounce at 5 minutes. The alpha on my Cascade was 7.8%. And I think I need to do a better job of going back into Beersmith and putting those numbers. Now, obviously, I can go back and look at the videos because I do put them in all the videos. But I know in Beersmith, I rarely go back and adjust to what I hit. Usually what I do is I just keep all my papers, or I keep it in my notebook or on my tablet and then go look at there. So we did collect about 3.5 gallons from our first runnings. Maybe it was closer to 3. Then for our second, as you can see, it was a lot clearer, but you're going to get that because most of the sugars are going to come out in the first floor off. So our second floor off did hit 10 bricks, so that's pretty good. Again, this is home brewing. We don't really care what we hit as long as we make a good beer. We're gonna be fine in the long run. So for this one, I did collect 8 gallons of liquid. That is a little short for me, and again, I don't know why, but my mega pot, the boil off is about 1.5 gallons per hour, and I need to look into Beersmith a little bit more to see what I can do to adjust that, because even with I think if I followed the recipe 100%, I would be way short for the amount of liquid I need. So obviously, as you're seeing right now, I've got a little help, and fermentation is done. So for our gravity, our starting gravity, we are at a 1070. Beersmith did call for a 1074, but at Flame Out, don't forget, we do put 12 ounces of honey in this. The honey is really just to ward off any, I guess, little critters or any of the bad yeast or anything in the fruit that you're putting in here. And what I do is I do freeze it and then I just put it in. Knock on wood, I've never had an infection in my raspberry beer, but you could have it, so you might want to heat it up and let it boil for 15 minutes before you put it in. But this is going to be a high ABV beer, so we should be okay. So 4 pounds of raspberries are going in. If I had let's say a Anvil fermenting bucket, I probably would have put all these in a paint bag or my brew in the bag, and so that way everything was together, and then when I could just pull the whole thing out and wouldn't have to deal with this, because this is a pain. But the Carboy glass one is the only one I had, so I just used what I had. And again, this is how I usually do it, so it's not a big deal. It just takes a while to get all those raspberries down in there. Obviously, I do let them thaw so I can push them through there. So for this one, yeast was US 05. I did pitch 1 packet of that. When I transferred it onto the raspberries, it was at 9 bricks. So technically ABV was 7.05%, and After a week on the raspberries, I did transfer it into the keg, and we ended up with a 9.42% ABV. So overall, I think that is a little bit higher than last year. I did not put oxygen into the liquid, the wort. I did not put oxygen into the wort before fermentation. I wanted to see what it would do. I actually wanted the ABV to be a little bit lower with a little bit of a sweeter beer, because I'm only using 4 pounds of raspberries instead of the 7 that I normally use. But we will have the tasting here soon. So thank you for joining me, and until next time, happy brewing.